We start with the breaking news. The deadliest school shooting in American history happened yesterday in a small town in Texas. Could be just like any North Dakota town, 15,000 people, roughly 54 miles from a border. Many towns in North Dakota somewhat similar to that town. Also, some interesting news I want to share with you because we're going to dive into this later in the show. Governor Greg Abbott, the governor of Texas, had a presser earlier today. He came out and said, look, with this shooter, no history of mental illness, no prior record, and things that were posted via social media. Important to note that last point there, but there's a lot of conversation, obviously, around the mental health situation in our nation. So, with no mental health history or issues, no prior record, how do you explain this? How do you explain an 18-year-old young man living with his grandma, it sounds like, snaps, breaks? We're going to leave it open to your thoughts today. The entire show is going to be a conversation about, okay, when is enough enough? How do we solve this problem so that our second, third, fourth graders, any young person can walk into a school and not have to worry about someone walking in and shooting them to death? Number to call into the show, 701-271-1100, 701-271-1100. Welcome to the Chris Berg Show. This is your daily dose of truth. We're going to dive into some truths today to help set you free. We're coming to you live from the PetroServe USA studio, helping you and America fuel better. So yesterday I was off, not feeling great. So knew, hey, look, I need to take a day off. I need to manage my own mental health. And it's hard for me to say this because I love what I do. And I saw the news break. It was shortly before 4 o'clock, and I saw the news break about another school shooting in the United States of America. And the first thought I had is, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to show up to a mic once every 6 months, 12 months, 18 months and talk about second, third, and fourth graders getting gunned down in a school. I want to serve people and do it in a way that raises who they are for the greater good. So I'm not going to get into a lot of details or data today around the shooting. We are going to talk about the power of language. So you're very privy to that and some of the things that are happening right now in the context of this conversation so that you and I talked about this a lot when we first started the Chris Berg Show. It's only been, 6, 7 months here now that I've been here. To be completely frank with you, I've been going through my own issues in my own life, dealing with those things personally. So there were times in the beginning of the show that I felt like I was sort of hitting the right notes, and I'm going to get to my point here in a moment. And there's been times where I'm like, man, I'm showing up here at this mic and just not inside my own body because dealing with own personal stuff that I needed to deal with. I think that that's finally starting to get handled, at least at some level. At some point in time, maybe in the future, I will be more explicit and have more disclosure about that. But today is not that day. It's not even appropriate for that. My point is this. When we first started the show, because it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that, and Abe Lincoln talked about this, President Xi has talked about this from China. The United States of America is going to get destroyed only one way, and that's from within. The only way that the greatest nation on the planet in the history of the planet gets destroyed is if we destroy it from within. And you look at all the tension and divisiveness happening right now in the world today, the only thing that I know to do for us to do, there's a few things we're going to talk about. But number one is pray, pretty obvious. Number two, overcome evil with good, right? A lot of buttons being pushed these days. A lot of us, our initial reaction, anger. You see something, anger. You see something, I'm mad about it. I'm going to scream about it. I cannot stress to you enough. It has never been more important in the history of this nation. If we were going to overcome this evil, because that's what it was yesterday, with good, and I've talked about this before, you and I must make a commitment to ourselves, to our family, to our communities, to our nation, to our planet, that you and I are going to lead with love. It's not easy. My buttons can get pressed really simply, and I can have that automatic emotional reaction and get mad and get angry. I did it today when I was driving to a meeting and somebody cut me off and wasn't driving fast enough. So look, I'm not asking us to be perfect. I'm just asking us to be present. I'm just asking us to be present to the fact that if we don't shift the vibration, if you and I don't shift the conversation, who is? And that's what I'm asking you and I to do, is look in the mirror and go, okay, why not me? Why not me to lead this conversation? Why not me to lead this revelation? Because we're in the midst of it. We're in the midst of the book right now. I saw somebody that I follow on Telegram, someone that has a lot of insight into the intelligence community, the military community. And he just basically put on Telegram today, welcome to hell. Welcome to hell. And there are days when you look across the landscape of what's going on, and you're like, yeah, these elitists who they think are elites, right? They think that they are the puppeteers and you and I are the puppets. So there's a lot of reasons for what's happening in our nation right now. Number one, let's lead with love. Number two, let me ask you this, because I know for myself, and we're going to get to some sound bites here in a moment, but ever since these school shootings have happened, and they have tended to happen more frequently than in the past, how many times have you found yourself saying this, somebody you know saying this, maybe the media saying this? It's like, this never happened 20 years ago. This never happened 40 years ago. We never had these school shootings 20, 30, 40 years ago. So what's changed? And I don't know if that's true, right? I don't know if that's exactly accurate. All I know is it's much more prevalent today than it was. So I'm asking you right now, think about this. Let's look at the last 40 years. What has changed in the last 40 years so that people now can look back and say, this never happened 40 years ago? Heck, I remember my dad going to high school and going to school in Oaks, North Dakota. There's a lot of hunting that goes on in Oaks, North Dakota, right? He would literally show up to school with his shotgun. So as soon as school was out, they could go out and get some birds. It never crossed anybody's mind that, oh my gosh, there's a shotgun in a student locker. What are we going to do about it? Well, it wasn't even in their universe. Wasn't even in their universe. Students, and many of you that listen to the show right now, you remember these days. You could bring your shotgun to school because you're like, hey, me and my boys, we're going out hunting after class. Big deal. Didn't matter. So what's changed in the last 40 years? I'm going to give you one suggestion that's changed, one idea. And it goes back to the 9 black robes that we've talked about many, many times that seem to be running this nation as of late, because everybody wants to be a derelict of their own personal responsibilities within the legislature, within the executive department of this nation. So they all defer to the 9 black robes. So the thing that I would suggest to you that has changed dramatically in the last 40, actually more years than that since this decision, but you may remember it was June, which we're coming up on. It was June of 1963. The Supreme Court said that legally or officially mandated Bible reading or prayer in public school was deemed unconstitutional. So to take a book that is about truth and be using it and reading it to young minds, which have got some of the best soil in their brains that they're ever going to have, 9 black robes ruled that it was unconstitutional to go and plant those seeds of truth in these minds. And we wonder what's changed. For those of you that are parents, those of you that are grandparents, let me give you some options. Would you rather have teachers, administrators showing up to your school and talking about, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not covet, thou shalt love thy neighbor, thou shalt love your and honor your mother and father? Would you rather have teachers and administrators planting those kind of seeds into your students' brains? Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt love thy neighbor, thou shalt love thy mother. Or would you prefer what's happening today where students show up and go, let me ask you, do you feel like a boy or a girl today? And whichever one it is, I tell you what, I can take you back here and I can actually give you clothes so you can dress up any way you feel. When you and I both know you're either XX or you're XY. That's it. if we're going to talk about science. So it's pretty abundantly clear to me. I hope it is to you. And this is why I think you see so many people, and you can look at the data right now, look at some articles that are flying across different media outlets, that people are fleeing public education. And praise God that they are. The question is now what? How do we begin to support people that are saying, hey, look, I'm no longer going to be part of this public education system, and I'm going to put my son or daughter in a much better position? So I want you to think about the things that have changed and why my dad could bring a shotgun to school, put it in his locker, and go hunting after school, and nobody even thought about it. Nobody even thought about it. Where now today, which I'm going to get to the solution here, or one of them, and I'll bring it up in a particular way. How much money did we spend on schools for COVID? I don't have all the data in front of me. All I know is if you even just go look at Fargo Public Schools, their accounts are really, really flush right now from federal money, from the federal education system. Why? Oh, because we got all kinds of money. Hey, if we're going to put you on lockdown, which, by the way, think about this for a moment, we're putting kids out of the classrooms and yet giving the school districts billions and billions of dollars for what? To change air ducts? So we don't have the money right now to go and put in the appropriate security mechanisms inside of schools when we know they're out there, to put the appropriate security mechanisms in schools so some random 18-year-old can't just show up with a firearm and start shooting at second, third, and fourth graders. We've got the money to go support air duct changes, but we don't have the money to go support security around schools. Why? Ask yourself why. What are the two biggest industries for the Democrat Party? I've been saying to you for months now. We ain't seen nothing yet, and it breaks my heart to say it. We ain't seen nothing yet. What's coming in the summer of rage? When this Supreme Court decision drops, look out. We've already seen the seeds that are planted with what's happening. We will get to, hopefully at some point, Senator Christopher Murphy's speech on the Senate floor. What about Steve Kerr's speech? A basketball coach lecturing 50 U.S. senators that were elected by his people about how they should be controlling our constitutional rights. Just go bounce the basketball, bro. Go make the plays. I don't need you to lecture 50 senators about your POV on constitutional rights, especially when you ain't going to call out China, especially when we've got China funneling fentanyl into this nation, killing. It's the biggest killer for people 18 to 45 in the country right now. And Steve Kerr, where are you talking about fentanyl? I haven't heard a word about fentanyl from you, Steve. But boy, you sure can come in and talk and act all brutish and bold about my constitutional rights. All right, we got sound bites coming up right after